My dear friends, if ever there was a tyrant more insidious than the one who wields visible chains, it is the one who manipulates the heart in the name of love. There exists a peculiar breed of deception so subtle, so intoxicating, that its captives often do not realize they are bound until the moment they seek to escape. This is the nature of narcissistic control. It is not a mere dictatorship of words or rules, nor an overt display of authority, but rather a slow erosion of selfhood, a calculated siphoning of dignity, until the victim is left questioning the very foundation of their own worth. The narcissist does not conquer through force alone, but through an intricate dance of illusion. Adoration followed by rejection, praise laced with quiet scorn, tenderness that demands a price. To the untrained eye, their love appears profound, their wisdom sharp, their affections consuming in a way that can feel like destiny itself. But in truth, it is a cruel masquerade, a drama designed not for the well-being of the beloved, but for the power of the one who orchestrates it. This is why, when control is threatened, the narcissist does not retreat with grace, does not resign themselves to the natural course of human relationships, where seasons change and parting can be met with dignity. No, when a narcissist loses control, they fight, not in the manner of those who truly love and mourn, but in a way that reveals the very nature of what their attachment truly was: ownership, not love. To understand what happens when they lose control, one must first grasp why control is their lifeblood. A narcissist does not simply enjoy power, it is their very identity. Unlike ordinary men and women who take joy in shared experiences, in the dance of give and take, the narcissist sees only conquest and possession. To them, relationships are not about communion but dominance, not about growth but about reinforcement of their self-created mythology. They must be admired, they must be obeyed, they must be needed, not because they wish to give, but because without the mirror of your submission, their own reflection becomes unbearable. So what happens when this mirror cracks? When the one they have ensnared finally sees the web for what it is? Herein lies the great unraveling, the exposure of the illusion. But it is not a quiet collapse. It is an earthquake. The narcissist, now stripped of their perceived invincibility, does not fade into the shadows. Instead, they lash out, they scheme, they pull every trick they have ever used before, only this time with desperation rather than confidence. Some will beg, some will slander, some will manufacture chaos out of thin air, all in a desperate bid to regain what they believe is rightfully theirs: your mind, your emotions, your will. But take heart, dear reader, for there is power in knowledge. There is strength in recognizing the storm as it comes and standing firm against it. When the narcissist loses control, it is not you who is breaking, it is their illusion that is crumbling. And in that collapse, you are finally free. A wolf in sheep's clothing is perhaps the most dangerous creature of all, for it does not bare its fangs immediately, nor does it strike with visible malice. Instead, it appears gentle, remorseful even, offering words that resemble an apology, but lack the soul of true repentance. This is the essence of the narcissist's faux apology, a carefully crafted illusion designed not to heal wounds, but to reopen doors that should remain closed. When a narcissist senses they are losing control, their first instinct is rarely open aggression. No, the cunning mind seeks first to regain favor through deception. They do not apologize because they feel remorse. They apologize because they need access, because the strings they once pulled with ease have begun to fray. Their words may sound familiar, their tone may even mix sincerity, but listen closely, and you will find that their apologies lack the only thing that gives an apology weight: change. I'm sorry you feel that way. I never meant to hurt you. I guess I'm just a terrible person, aren't I? These are not apologies. They are deflections, attempts to reframe the narrative so that the wounded party feels guilt for being wounded. A true apology carries a weight of responsibility, an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, a commitment to transformation. A faux apology, by contrast, is an attempt to maintain power while giving the illusion of humility. It is a carefully placed chess move, a strategic retreat to lure the unsuspecting back into the fold. If one were to examine history and literature, one would find that the greatest deceivers never approach their victims with outright threats. The serpent in Eden did not force Eve to eat the fruit. It merely questioned, sowed doubt, framed the act as something beneficial. So too does the narcissist, not demanding forgiveness, but manipulating the narrative until the victim feels compelled to offer it. But what does one do in the face of such deception? How does one resist the pull of false penitence? The answer lies in discernment. True remorse is not spoken, it is proven. If an apology is followed by the same patterns, the same manipulations, the same wounds reopened time and again, then it was never an apology to begin with. It was bait. Resist the urge to soften at empty words. Judge not by what is said, but by what is done. A wolf in sheep's clothing may whisper sweetly, but its hunger remains unchanged. The deceiver never truly departs. He merely lingers in the shadows, waiting for the opportune moment to return. This is the nature of the narcissist's hoovering, a calculated re-entry designed not out of love or regret, but out of a desperate need to regain control. Like a master illusionist, they do not approach in the form of the tormentor you remember, but as the one you once cherished. And that is their greatest weapon, not force, but familiarity. When a narcissist senses that you are slipping beyond their reach, that their grip on your mind and emotions is loosening, they initiate what is known as the Hoover maneuver. It is named, quite fittingly, after a vacuum, an attempt to pull you back in by any means necessary. They remember what made you stay before, what made you believe, what softened your resolve, and they become that person once more. They craft messages that drip with nostalgia, engineered to remind you of the love that once seemed real. They appear at your doorstep with tears in their eyes, speaking of change, of regret, of a future where things will be different. And for a moment, you may believe them. But here is the bitter truth. They are not after reconciliation. They are after restoration of control. To a narcissist, your departure is not a loss of love, it is a loss of power, and so they hoover not because they cherish you, but because they cannot bear to see you exist beyond their reach. If they can just say the right words, do the right things, make you feel the way they made you feel in the beginning, they believe they can pull you back into the cycle. And once they do, the mask will fall, and the cruelty will return, often worse than before. Do not mistake their reappearance for redemption. A true change of heart is not measured in grand declarations, but in quiet consistency. The man who has truly repented does not knock upon the same door expecting it to open as before. He seeks forgiveness and accepts the consequence of having lost what he once took for granted. The narcissist does not. They hoover because they feel entitled to you. Let the door remain closed. Let silence be your answer. They may return as a lover, a friend, even a repentant soul, but understand this: a deceiver does not return to give, he returns to take. There are few things in life as unsettling as an unexpected encounter with someone you have fought to leave behind. It feels like fate, like the universe drawing your paths together once more. But in the hands of a narcissist, coincidence is not fate, it is strategy. The chance encounter is rarely chance at all. It is a calculated intrusion designed to unsettle, to remind you of their presence, to provoke a reaction that grants them power once more. The narcissist understands that physical presence carries an undeniable weight. No matter how strong you have become, no matter how much distance you have placed between yourself and their grasp, a sudden reappearance can send a shockwave through your soul. They know where you go, what routines bring you comfort, the places where your guard is down. And so they appear, not in a way that would seem overtly threatening, but just enough to make you question, just enough to stir doubt, just enough to pull at the threads of whatever healing you have worked so hard to weave together. Perhaps they show up at your favorite coffee shop, offering a casual smile as if you were old friends. Perhaps they appear at church, suddenly seeking redemption, conveniently positioned where you cannot ignore them. Perhaps they pass by the route you walk every evening, just happening to be there, just happening to meet your eye. And when it happens, when you feel that familiar pull of old emotions, the narcissist has already won half the battle. For even if you do not speak, even if you do not acknowledge them, they know the encounter will linger in your mind. But what is the purpose of this intrusion? It is not always to rekindle a relationship. Sometimes it is merely to remind you that they still exist. That no matter how far you have run, no matter how much strength you have reclaimed, they can still enter your world at will. It is a power play. It is a message, whispered without words. You are not free of me, and yet you are. True freedom does not come from the absence of the narcissist. It comes from the absence of their power over your emotions. If their sudden presence unsettles you, do not mistake that for destiny. Recognize it as the test that it is. A coincidence orchestrated by a desperate hand is still only an illusion. Do not fall for it. Walk past the mirage and never look back. A heart burdened by guilt is a heart that can be controlled. This is the silent creed of the narcissist, for they know that true power is not found in force, but in persuasion, in the subtle twisting of emotions until the victim willingly surrenders their will. Of all their weapons, emotional manipulation is the most insidious, for it does not come in the form of overt cruelty, but as a carefully woven web of guilt, obligation, and self-doubt. The goal is not to destroy you outright. It is to make you question yourself, to make you believe that their suffering is your fault, and that the only way to set things right is to return. This manipulation takes many forms, but at its core, it preys upon your greatest strength, your empathy. Narcissists are masterful at portraying themselves as the wounded party, the tragic soul who has been wronged. They rewrite the narrative of the past, casting themselves not as the manipulator but as the victim, and you, the one who finally broke free, as the heartless betrayer. I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I gave you everything. I can't eat, I can't sleep. I never thought you'd turn out to be this cruel. You said you cared. Was it all a lie? These words are not spoken out of genuine pain, but as instruments of control, designed to make you question the clarity of your decision. If they can make you doubt your own goodness, if they can plant the seed that perhaps you have been too harsh, then they have already begun to reclaim the power they lost. And yet, the most dangerous part of this manipulation is not what they say, it is what you feel. The pang of guilt, the instinct to comfort, the small voice inside that wonders, what if I am the one who is wrong? This is where they win. For a person who questions themselves is far easier to bend than one who stands firm in their truth. But let me tell you this, your empathy is not a weakness. The ability to feel deeply, to care for others, to want to make things right, these are marks of a heart untarnished, a soul that remains whole despite the wounds inflicted upon it. Do not allow the narcissist to turn these virtues into chains. Recognize the game for what it is. If an apology does not come with change, if regret does not come with repentance, then it is not genuine, it is bait. And you are not obligated to bite. True compassion is not allowing yourself to be hurt again. It is knowing when to walk away without guilt, without regret, and without looking back. The narcissist is never content to simply lose control. They do not retreat in silence, nor do they accept reality with grace. Instead, they rewrite it. When manipulation fails, when the facade of remorse is no longer enough to lure you back, they turn to a darker weapon, the art of distortion. False accusations and smear campaigns are not acts of desperation. They are acts of calculated vengeance. If they cannot control you, they will control how others see you. The narcissist understands one painful truth. Perception is often more powerful than reality. They do not need to prove that you are the villain of their story. They only need to plant the suggestion, to cast the seed of doubt into the minds of those around you. And so, with the precision of a master storyteller, they craft their narrative, one where they are the wronged party, the misunderstood victim, and you, the betrayer, the abuser, the cold and heartless deserter. They just abandoned me without reason. I tried everything to make it work, but they're impossible. You wouldn't believe the things they did to me. At first, these words may seem petty, unimportant. You may tell yourself that truth prevails, that people will see through the lies. But the narcissist does not need everyone to believe them. They only need enough. Enough to isolate you. Enough to make you question whether fighting back is even worth it. They know that the more you defend yourself, the guiltier you will seem. And yet, the cruelest part of the smear campaign is not the damage it does to your reputation. It is the effect it has on your own mind. There is something uniquely unsettling about hearing falsehoods spoken about you with such conviction. It is disorienting, maddening even, to see yourself painted as a villain in a story where you were the one who suffered. And if you are not careful, you may begin to internalize it, to wonder if perhaps there is some truth to their lies. But here is what you must remember. The narcissist does not accuse you because you are guilty. They accuse you because they are. Their accusations are not reflections of who you are, but confessions of who they are. When they call you manipulative, they reveal their own deception. When they call you heartless, they expose their own lack of empathy. So do not play their game. Do not waste your breath fighting shadows. The truth does not need defense, it only needs time. The louder they scream, the more desperate they are. And in the end, it is not their words that will stand, but their own unraveling. When all else fails, when manipulation no longer bends your will and deception no longer clouds your mind, the narcissist reaches for their final weapon, fear. Threats and intimidation are the last resort of the desperate, the final grasp of a drowning tyrant who cannot accept that their control has slipped through their fingers. If they cannot lure you back with charm, if they cannot shame you into submission, they will attempt to make you afraid. And in their eyes, fear is as good as obedience. Threats take many forms, each carefully crafted to exploit your deepest vulnerabilities. Some are direct, spoken with venom and certainty. You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it. Others are more insidious, cloaked in vagueness to keep you guessing. I know things about you. It would be a shame if they came out. They may threaten to expose secrets, real or fabricated. They may threaten your reputation, your safety, your career, even your family. And if none of these hold power over you, they may turn to self-harm, spinning a new story in which your absence has left them so broken that they might not survive. But understand this. A narcissist's threats are rarely about carrying out destruction. They are about making you believe in its possibility. The uncertainty is the weapon. The sleepless nights wondering what they will do next. The constant looking over your shoulder. The fear that one wrong move will unleash their wrath. This is how they seek to keep you tethered, not by action, but by anticipation. Yet, beneath this facade of power, there lies a simple truth. Narcissists are not as strong as they pretend to be. Their threats are often hollow, their intimidation a mask for their own desperation. They are not gods with the power to ruin lives at will. They are fragile beings who cannot tolerate losing control. And more often than not, their bark is far worse than their bite. This does not mean threats should be ignored. True safety is built not on naivety, but on wisdom. If a narcissist threatens you, document everything. If they attempt to smear your name, stand firm in the truth. If they seek to harm, seek protection. But do not let their words become the chains that bind you. The greatest victory over a narcissist is not retaliation, it is indifference. Fear is a choice, and courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it dictate your life. The narcissist may believe they hold power, but their threats only have weight if you give them room to grow. Stand tall, stand firm, for when you refuse to be afraid, their last weapon crumbles into dust. The great tragedy of narcissistic control is not merely the suffering it inflicts, but the way it distorts reality itself. When entangled with such a force, one forgets what freedom even feels like. It is a slow erosion, a gradual yielding, until what once felt unbearable becomes familiar, and what once seemed unthinkable becomes acceptable. But there comes a moment when the illusion cracks, when the weight of manipulation lifts, when the mind begins to see clearly again. And in that moment you realize that freedom was never beyond your reach. It was simply buried beneath the lies. The narcissist would have you believe that without them you are lost, that their presence, no matter how toxic, was necessary for your survival. They crafted a world in which you questioned your own strength, your own judgment, your own worth. But what they never accounted for was this. Once a person has seen the truth, once the spell is broken, there is no going back. And so the greatest victory over a narcissist is not revenge, not proving them wrong, not engaging in their twisted games. It is simply this, walking away and never looking back. Freedom is not just the absence of the narcissist's voice, it is the absence of their power over your mind. It is reclaiming your thoughts, your emotions, your choices. It is learning to trust yourself again, to believe in your own perception of reality. It is understanding that your worth was never dependent on their approval. That love is not something to be earned through suffering. That peace is not a prize granted by another, but a birthright that has always belonged to you. There will be moments of doubt. There will be echoes of their words, lingering fears that perhaps they were right, that perhaps you are to blame. But hear this, your freedom is proof enough that they were wrong. Every step you take away from their control is a step toward the life that was always meant to be yours. So let them smear your name. Let them cast their threats. Let them weave their illusions. None of it matters anymore, for they have already lost the one thing they fought so hard to keep you. And that, above all else, is their greatest defeat. Go forward, not as a survivor, but as one who has reclaimed what was stolen. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are free. And that is enough.